Just one.
Hey, you. What's shaking, Unky?
Good evening. Forgive me, but could you direct me to where I might find a taxi?
There ain't none. They scared to come up here after dark. Honky.
Honky, eh? I am not a honky. I am Romanian.
You mean you was a Romanian, mother?
Hey, man, did you see Roots? I wouldn't mess with him. His grandfather was a Watusi.
Watusi, a warrior.
Now, the time is late. The man is tall, but I got a date, so he must fall. Ah!
Let me have the mother.
It's Thanksgiving time, turkey.
I ain't with these guys. These brothers just standing here. Now, I know my way home, so you don't have to show me. It's dudes like you that give the neighborhood a bad name.
Raid House and Garden Bug Killer.
Greetings. Welcome to CRWS study on race code war, the power of words, images, and symbols on the Black Psyche by Kyrie and Naharo. We're covering pages 158 through 172. And we kind of have two sections here. One covering word bombs and the general areas of people activity, and one covering in the area of 3, sports entertainment. And very, very constructive. I definitely enjoyed this section. And I think what we saw on the screen earlier with the intro clip was a pretty grand example of the combination of word bombs, race code words, becoming literal racist images that are fed to the millions of people. And I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs from 158 so folks will understand what a word bomb is. But Kyler Inner states on 158
Hey,
beginning of
before you, before
section.
you,
He
before you
says,
read, can I comment on the clip?
"Oh yeah, if it's if it's
Yeah.
to the text,
Yeah, I think it is. I just saw Dr. Francis Cress Welsing talked about this thing called contrast racism. So after the black male is walking away with the TV, the next image is a bug spray and like roaches being sprayed by Raid. I just want to say that's very intentional and to me an example of contrast racism, associating black males with cockroaches that need to be exterminated. I just thought that was interesting.
yeah, I caught that as well, and I definitely think that you're 100% accurate. That's how they prime the mind to associate black people with pests needing to be exterminated. So it makes a lot of sense. So at the top of 158, he calls word bombs explosive language devices used to degrade and besmirched targeted racial populations. And like some examples of word bombs are crime infested, drug infestation, gang bang area, political ineptitude, darkest or deep Africa, savage, troubled neighborhood, crack infested neighborhood, Black Africa, dark continent. And the list goes on until infinity, honestly. Menace to society, there are tons. And these race code words in the form of word bombs have been created to maintain the system, to further confuse non-white people, further present Black people as monsters, thugs, criminals, people unworthy of help and deserving of mistreatment, essentially. So on 158, in the middle of the page, he states, the word bomb has the same impact, except it uses words to inflict immeasurable psychological, perceptual, and social damage. Word bombs are dropped in the media, education system, politics, and other areas of life. These highly inflammatory racial code words are often attached to images, music, and symbols. They are used as racial propaganda. Word bombs are dropped most frequently in television newscasts, cable television documentaries, public television programs, radio talk shows, newspaper articles, books, audio cassettes, music compact discs, commercial advertisements, billboards, internet websites, movies, television shows, motion pictures, videos, and other forms of modern communication. So you saw a lot of that in the beginning clip with the I don't know the actor's name. Smokey Damages. Could you help me with that? Who's this actor here playing the vampire?
He's his name's George Hamilton, and the film is called Love at First Bite, and it came out in 1979.
Yeah, thank you, George Hamilton. Yeah, that clip is a excellent example of what just manipulating and presenting images of Black people being muggers, having to go on the mean streets and deal with these savage Blacks, criminal Blacks, and the imagery of us being thieves all culminates to this stuff right here being praised and glorified. I wonder how many white people still watch film and just laugh at what white people have depicted Black people as. It's really, really, really powerful stuff. This is powerful propaganda right here. And the list that he that I read with all these forms of communication, often called media, just goes to show you how these messages are kind of 24/7. Like if you're interacting with any sort of anything that can give you information, is 9 times out of 10 gonna be riddled in racism and that one time it isn't, it's probably going to be because you're like reading something that's attempted counter racist material or media, which is very, very few. So it makes no sense how I mean, it makes a lot of sense how the entire planet has been sabotaged and brain trashed to think the images that white people have created of black people are authentic. Because he mentions later on that these word bombs and these coded messages that white people have created, and their literal way that they use words has infected everyone. This is why not only white people, but also all people, I suspect, when sometimes they see a black person, they get a little scared, clutch their furs, they get a little uneasy because they've been, immersed in the system of white supremacy that literally programs us to, fear black people, fear what they're capable of, fear what they might do to you, even though it's white people who we should be very suspicious of and we should be afraid of, because they're the ones who actually have the history and legacy of harming people in the most brutal ways. But I've been yammering on a bit, so I'll see if folks want to chime in, share some of their notes, maybe something they noticed in the clip. But again, thank you again, sir, for that decoding of the bug spray bit.
Yeah, the that clip there is really telling, and I think just as attempted counter racists, I think we really should just get in that habit of just checking anything that we hear and see for racism, white supremacy. Like Kari and Hara says in the part that you just read there, it's in everything, music, it's in commercial advertisements, billboards, internet websites, movies, television shows, motion pictures, videos, other forms of modern communication. So I definitely agree with what you said there in that paragraph there. And as for the clip, I remember watching this film years ago. And it didn't even occur to me, because I was quite young when I saw that, when it was broadcast on TV over here. And yeah, I didn't even catch it. But now, obviously, I just check everything that I see on so-called TV, like on TV, when it's supposed to be so-called entertainment, and you can usually find it. And in that clip is a perfect example of how black people are the butt of the joke for racist man, woman, and child there. So the first place that the vampire goes to in this new world when he goes from where he is in Transylvania, wherever it is, and he comes to this to so-called America, he goes to a place where apparently white people fear. The black people, of course, are portrayed as sort of mindless, so-called reverse racists in that clip. The first thing is that's the so-called reverse racists, where we're all a little bit racist, aren't we? That's supposed to be the first implication or subtext there. First, that's number one. And then they say I think they say to him, or he asked them where he can get a taxi from. And they say that the taxis are afraid to come here, implying again that white people are afraid to come where there's these unruly black people. So that's the second subtext there, or code number two. And then of course they're supposed to attempt to rob him, which were expected when we see black people in these types of areas. The white supremacists are trying to say that this is exactly what black people do, especially to white people. Which he easily overcomes as well, because he's the vampire, which then again is implying that you need to have some sort of super strength as a white person to deal with these unruly black beasts, right? So that's the other subtext there, code number three. And the implication there is if he was a normal white person, they'd probably have killed him. So that's supposed to instill more fear in the minds of white people. And then interesting, the black male who pulls a knife on the white vampire, he then the vampire then makes the blade limp. And obviously the subtext there, it's almost like a kind of like a flaccid, he turns the blade into some sort of like flaccid phallus-like kind of thing, which, in a system of race and white supremacy, we are the most impotent people, black people. So you know. And also interestingly, like I think it was Sir that was saying before, it then immediately cuts to white male watching an ad for bug spray right afterwards. And I suspect it was deliberate, because these scenes, they don't actually they don't add anything to the film or take anything away from the film. All it does is show racism, white supremacy in the film. You know, it doesn't actually from actually, if you just look at the film as a piece of work, it doesn't actually add creativity or anything to the film, or anything to the plot line. So why is it actually there if not just to belittle black people or just expand that system of racism, white supremacy? So, you know, it's exterminate these roaches or pests or black people, I guess. Yes, I'll mute my line.
Quick question, was the clip played? I was on my phone, so I don't know if the clip was played.
The clip was played, yes.
Okay, I missed that. I'll review it later. But I guess for my notes, starting out with word bombs, I found a lot of it very interesting, especially the bit about it being where he says these are highly inflammatory racial code words. They're often attached to images, music, and symbols that are used as racial propaganda. So already in that, I was thinking of what is kind of the most, I guess, the biggest maybe word bomb that has become so apparent in, you know, the past couple of years. I'll share that a little bit later. But so, you know, moving on, he talks about how mostly in society today, white people and black people are still very much segregated. So white people, and I guess black people to some extent, rely on the media to kind of give them a basis for these interactions. It says on the top of 159, in this society where most people only know each other from interaction in the workplace or through the media, the image is extremely important. So we have these racial word bombs being used to kind of paint a picture, right, of black people. And this is what many white people are going by when in their day-to-day interactions with white people. He also goes on to say later in the text that a lot of times the people who are writing these racial word bombs are racist white supremacist think tanks. And I thought that was very important. So we since black people and white people are still very much separated in society, we only know what the media is telling us. So the media is wholeheartedly creating the images that we go by when we are interacting with one another. And then he also says we have no real way of knowing each other except through words and images in the media. So I think it's very accurate in saying that the media is maybe the greatest contributor to the race war that's currently being waged against black people, non-white people on the planet, the greatest tool for the white supremacists. And I liked how he also mentioned the KKK. I think there was a broadcast with Dr. Sinq, and I brought up the KKK. But you know, the KKK nowadays, or even for the most part, many black people, non-white people who are very confused about racism think that the KKK is racism, white supremacy. They don't understand that it can be their neighbor, it can be their coworker, it can be their employer. So every time we're talking about racism, white supremacy, they think of the KKK and these so-called hate groups. He says on 159, the horror tales and legacy of KKK racial terrorism are well known and established. In the real white world, they are the least effective and the most exposed white supremacists. I thought that was a very good quote right there, that they are the least effective and the most exposed white supremacists. So this is for the non-white people, the black people listening to this broadcast. The KKK are the least effective and the most exposed white supremacists. If white people and maybe even some black people have identified the KKK, know where they are, know who they are, what they do, what they look like, if we have been able to identify them, why is racism still here today? Why are we still dealing with racism if we already know who the racist white supremacists are? My answer to that is we are still very confused about racism, majority of us. So we still think that the KKK are these racist white supremacists. So that, I guess, in a sense, is a word bomb, right? You hear white supremacists, think KKK. Yeah, so let me see what else I got. Oh, and then very interesting too, on 160, I went to a skating rink yesterday. You know, I found it of constructive value, getting some exercise done, and I enjoy skating from time to time. But one thing on 160, top 160 says, white males seem to hold their women closer or call to their children to come closer when black males pass them on the street or are seen in the plaza or mall. And I cannot tell you how many times, I can't count how many times on the finger, you know, given it was children hours, right? But how many times a child would, you know, can't control themselves, you know, is falling, can't, you know, learn how to skate. They're running into me, and then their father's like, get over here, come here, you know, terrified. I suspect that that's what this was going on. That you know, the images that have been created and associated with the black male was being manifested. Before I continue to share more of my notes, coming back to the word bomb, I think one word bomb that, you know, I thought of while I was reading this was the word Trump supporter. I don't know if anybody else thought about that, but I think Trump supporter is definitely a word bomb. I think most people, especially non-white people, are terrified of being called a Trump supporter. And I think a lot of white people who are so-called liberals are terrified of being called Trump supporter. I think Trump supporter definitely holds this kind of weight and this even racial connotation, right? That people who are Trump supporters are automatically racist or are practicing racism, white supremacy. Whether or not they are, I don't know. But I think that was one word. If throughout the broadcast, if I think of another one, I'll share. That's what I had so far. Meet my line.
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. On page 159, I'd like to read what Kwaku was talking about earlier. The effective majority of Black people and white people, even in the new century, still do not reside in the same communities. The majority of Black people and white people are still physically separated. They have no real way of knowing each other except through words and images in the media. These words and images are embedded in the mind people so that people carry them everywhere they go. I respectfully disagree with this. The part where white people are still physically separated. No, they are not. I don't think so because, for one, I'm employed by white people. We have to go into their spaces in order to work and do most things. They own the businesses, the arena, the movie house, et cetera, et cetera. And white people, they ask a lot of questions. So I do not think that they don't know, except knowing each other, except through words. And there is no way of knowing each other except through words. And they ask a lot of questions. And I suggest that non-white people start asking a lot of questions to white people so we could learn and observe them, so we could decode and learn more about racism. Another part I want to read, racial code words can be difficult to decode at the conscious level. They are used as hidden and subtle persuaders to penetrate the mental and emotional terrain of the perceptual experience and subconscious mind. The soft racial code word slips into the back door of the subconscious mind undetected. Black people are not trained to understand how a white supremacist really thinks and are deceived very easily. So true. So true. So true. I agree with him 1,000% on that. Another part, when the term white supremacy is used in the media, whether on television or over the radio, a finger points or a voice gestures towards a white hooded creature riding a white horse and burning a white cross while spreading terror throughout the land. January 6th, anyone? Also, there was a march in August 12th, 2017, where a bunch of white men with tiki torches, fire, were marching and saying blood and soil, which we need to decode. One thing that was missing from that image, where were the white women? Where were their girlfriends? Where were their fiancés? Where were their wives?
They
So
were
that was
there.
missing. Yeah, that was missing from that. Yeah, and oh, there was another march, December 4th, 2021. It was called Reclaim America. They had on white gaiters, sunglasses, blue jackets, khaki pants, and brown boots and hats. That needs decoding. And I mute my line.
Well said. I also
Yeah, I wanted to chime in a bit if possible.
oh yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to read two paragraphs on page 159. And this is more of the associating Black males with crime essentially. And it's a big problem being a Black male is having the psychological warfare, which is manifested in the constant behavior patterns where people are, hiding, like double checking their pockets and crossing the street and punching their purses. And this kind of gives more insight into what it all means, basically. So all individual and group behavior is evaluated by words and images. When different racial groups interact as supermarkets, shopping malls, or entertainment events, the interpretations of these interactions are based on embedded words and images. If the word or image is of a criminals, thugs, big bud mamas, gangbangers, and rapists, the social treatment system will be based on those conceptualizations. This is why white women literally clutch their purses when shopping around or walking by Black males. This outdated belief is based on words that are backed up by thousands of visual depictions casting Black males as thieves. When white people drive through African American neighborhoods, their car doors are often locked. It's a really famous and racist trope of people, locking their doors when they see a Black person and making it a thing, basically. Like, people film it. People, it's been in films a lot. It's been in TV shows. It's been in songs. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because I feel like it's something that's going to continue to exacerbate. And I just saw a film today where there was a lot of contrast racism and a lot of what I'm reading in this book, basically. And this film is going to be seen by millions of people. So I'm quite worried about the future, whatever that is.
Yeah, we saw those negative visual depictions of Black males in the clip. We saw them depicted as thieves, of it being a incorrect neighborhood where white people shouldn't be. We saw all of that in the clip. And I think what's been read has been very significant. And I wanted to share this also from 159 because I really appreciate just the logic that the author has been able to put in a combination of these words. So he says, the horrid tales and legacy of KKK racial terrorism are well known and established. In the real white world, they are the least effective and the most exposed white supremacists. Black people have been skillfully manipulated into believing that white supremacy applies only to a small number of rednecks, tobacco chewing, and horse manuring smelling misfits. When the term white supremacy is used in the media, whether on television or over the radio, a finger points or a voice gestures towards a white hooded creature riding a horse and burning a white cross while spreading terror throughout the land. This is a skillful manipulation of images and words designed to cloak the real racist. The most effective white supremacists go about their work on a daily basis, largely undetected and unnoticed. I know some of this was read earlier, but I wanted to read both of these two paragraphs. This is definitely it reminds me of They Live, how the aliens are around the characters 24/7, but no one is none the wiser. Bringing that back down to the text I just read. This is why we should be suspicious of all persons who classify themselves as white, because they're the ones who are also helping to maintain the system. They're the ones that are going to meetings and determining how they're going to mistreat or keep Black people at the bottom, which is a form of mistreatment anyway. So we got to be suspicious of white people. They have done a masterful job at getting us focused on, hey, the racists are the white people saying nigger, and the white people who maybe are mean to their clients during when they're waiting on them at some sort of restaurant. But in actuality, it's a lot. It has to be a lot of white people from all walks of life. White people are only people able to have lives in the system. But it has to be white people from all walks of life doing something that I don't know quite what it is yet, because I'm still learning about this system, what it is and how it works. But it has to be enough white people doing something to keep this system going. So I have to be suspicious and suspect all of them of being, suspected racists, people who have no interest in helping me to produce justice. And I think that's very logical.
And also remember that the number one rule of racism is deception. So yes, be suspicious of that 80-year-old neighbor who bakes you oatmeal cookies. Be suspicious of that white person, man or woman, that hires you. How are they going to treat you when you get on the job? Be suspicious of that so-called white friend who doesn't want to talk about racism or talks about it in a non-constructive manner. Talks about it and doesn't explain it to you.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I completely agree with all that's been said so far. Especially, I mean, even over here with the in terms of the what do you call it? The word bombs over here, like I think it was Sir and a couple other people were saying about the Trump support, etc., replacing, I don't know, clan member or something, and lots of white people don't want to be associated with that, to be called a Trump supporter. And over here, we have kind of a similar expression, what I'd call that another racist word bomb. It's Brexiter now. So since we've had the whole Brexit thing, a lot of white people don't want to be called a Brexiter, and that's become a sort of racist code word for this is where the racists are. These are the racists over here. So if you're not a Brexiter, then somehow you're not a racist, or you shouldn't be confused, or you shouldn't be thought of as a racist. If you're a Brexiter, you're a racist. Not a Brexiter, then you're not a race. Then you're not a racist. It's just very, very. Yeah, and it's just it just speaks to how our lack of understanding of what racism, white supremacy is, and how it works in terms of exactly like what Helen B was saying earlier as well, when she was talking about there's no way to be separate from white people in a system of racism, white supremacy. That's impossible. I mean, case in point, as the madness that's going on now with a certain medication, which I won't even say exactly what it is, but that medication now. So there are black people all over the world who are so-called, some people will be led to believe that these black people are so-called separate from white people. That's impossible. They are going to dictate whether those black people all over the world take that medication or not. So there's no way to be separate from white people in a system of racism, white supremacy. You know, not if they can poison your water supply, etc., etc., etc. And just one little part, a little VGQ here, where it says that passage on 159. I did note that passage as well. The part there in the paragraph where he says, in the real world, where he's referring to the KKK, Kari and Aharo, and he says, in the real world, they are the least effective and the most exposed white supremacists. They are the most exposed, and I do believe that. I'm not entirely sure about it. It did conjure up some things in my mind. I did think they are the most exposed white supremacists, and I agree with that part. In terms of being the least effective, I'm not that sure. I'm not so sure, because I think they are as effective as they need to be. They're as effective as they need to be. So in white supremacy is one giant engine, right? And all the component parts are doing exactly what they need to do in order to move the machinery. So each part is equally as important as the other parts. So the so-called refined white supremacists who don't want to so-called get their hands dirty rely on the so-called less smart white supremacists who don't mind getting their hands dirty and doing the overt violence. So the Anders Breivik and the Dylan Roofs and just the other day, the Ethan Crumbleys, they're just as important as the, Joseph Goebbels were, right? Was in like Hitler time, the propaganda guy. So likewise, the so-called less smart white supremacists are backed up by the smarter ones, and I think they both inspire and influence each other just as much in order to keep the system of racism and white supremacy going. So the overt one, the less overt one, they're all sort of contributing to that whole engine of racism, white supremacy, both as important as each other and both as dangerous.
Yeah, I would say that following the logic, the racist image of the KKK member and the redneck and the skinhead, like that image is exposed. Like Black people, when they think of a racist, that may come to mind. But as for them associating like the KKK members with being judges and often so-called law enforcement, race soldiers, and also just those people aren't really that much exposed, because when they go and do their parades and their meetings, they wear their masks, so they're not actually exposed. We don't really know who they are. They still may be judges and pretending to be police officers, traffic enforcers. They could be working on all sorts of jobs and going to these and participating in what is known to be the more overt types of racism, but they still may have very powerful positions that dictate a lot of Black people being mistreated or being put in greater confinement. So
completely agree. It's like the Kyle Rittenhouse, what he does, or the Dylan Roof, can inspire the judge that let Kyle Rittenhouse go. Right, so they inspire each other equally. They're both equally as dangerous, and there's no telling how much influence a Kyle Rittenhouse or Dylan Roof has on, say, a smarter white supremacist who will then go on to be inspired by that type of overt violence, and then he'll be inspired, to work on a new form of germ warfare or something to exterminate even more Black people, hundreds or maybe thousands. So yeah, they're both as dangerous, and they just keep that engine of racism, white supremacy going, and they just influence each other.
Yeah, precisely. And in regards to the word bombs, I think Black Lives Matter is a very explosive word bomb in 2021. It just evokes so many interesting thoughts amongst people classified as Black and people who classify themselves as white. So I think that's another effective word bomb that has been allowed to be used. I don't know if Black people organize those combination of words together, I definitely know white people allowed us to popularize it and create a so-called movement behind it. And it's yeah, I think it's a really interesting combination of words. Word bomb for sure. I really liked what's written here on 160. It's a very necessary reminder that racism is war, a war against non-white people. And I just really appreciate the logic here. So I'm gonna share it. He says, Black people have never mounted an offensive campaign to wage war against white people and burn and rape and pillage their neighborhoods. As a matter of historical record, the reverse is true. White supremacists have inflicted pain and suffering on Black people for hundreds of years. Somehow, this history of oppression is conveniently forgotten. Black people should fear riding through any white community based on the historical record of lynching and murder. Derogatory racial words enable white people to believe that Blacks are evil, dangerous, and crime-ridden. Some of them even believe that Blacks are planning to conduct a race war in their communities. Millions of white people in rural and suburban communities are armed to the teeth, and some are still actively preparing for a race war. This racial fear is also reflected in the loud calls for fighting crime, which, when decoded, means incarcerating Black males. In the fear of a Black race war, they disregard the most salient race crime statistics. These statistics reveal that only a small number of whites are the criminal. Hold on. These statistics reveal that only a small number of whites are the criminal victims of Blacks. Most of these crimes committed against white people are by white people. So I think some of this information is not that logical, because he says that white people they're like arming themselves because they're preparing for a race war. I think that's not them preparing for a race war. They know that they're in a war against us, so they're just maintaining themselves in the war. I don't think they I don't think many of them fear of a so any sort of Black uprising, any sort of Black attempted uprising involving large numbers of weapons. They may fear genetic annihilation, but I don't think it's through that didn't mean that Black people waging a Black race war against them, which he called it. But they yeah. So, but this is still very constructive information. But I just think it would have been more clear if he had worded it in that manner.
Yeah, I agree there. Actually, I underlined parts of that as well, and that's that same passage there where he said on page 160, where he says, "As a matter of historical fact, the reverse is true. White supremacists have inflicted pain, and suffering on Black people for hundreds of years. Somehow, the history of oppression is conveniently forgotten." I'd say it definitely has not been forgotten by racist man and racist woman. They just pretend that they don't know. They know. They definitely understand that. That's why a lot of times when people try to mention that, especially if we want to talk about that in schools and have that on a school curriculum, they completely fight against that, because they don't want that to be. They don't want the stuff that they already know. They don't want it to be just more present in the minds of more people. But they definitely understand that. So it's just a way of them being very, very, very deceptive in a refined stage of racism, white supremacy. So that little part there on 160, I'm not sure, because they definitely haven't forgotten that.
To add to that, a sort of a reminder to everybody who's listening to this broadcast, to this business meeting. Just think of Katrina and what happened when people were trying to relocate, and the white communities, air quotes, white people who were armed and was like, nope, you can't stop here, keep moving. no, you can't come this way. So please just remember that, Katrina.
Yep, and a lot of white people took that as an opportunity to go down to that area and try and go on a black person hunt. They went down there to hunt the niggers. A lot of evidence to support that.
Correct. I mean, that's not the only time, people, but that's the one that stands out to me right now. But there are other times as well. Please do your research.
Wow, thank you. So I did this section was so interesting because I just learned a lot of interesting happenings that have happened in the system of white supremacy. We learned about a lot of interesting characters and all their shenanigans. One of them is Mr. Larry Lavin. And I also know there's a bunch of people named Larry who in the system of white supremacy who seem to do very, very incorrect things. Larry Nassar comes to mind. But anywho, we learned about a bunch of interesting characters. So I'm gonna actually before I read this, let me put something on the screen.
While you putting on something on the screen, let me read this real quick.
Oh, please do.
Yeah, we kind of read it already, but Black people should fear writing through any white community based on historical records of lynching and murder, sundown towns. I think his name is James Loden. It's not the best book, but I think it's constructive to read. Oh, and another thing real quick. Most of the crimes committed against white people are by white people. So why are they not afraid of each other?
Good point.
That's a very excellent observation and question. I would think so. A lot of what they present in the forms of Area 3 entertainment, they do seem to be afraid of themselves sometimes too.
It's interesting, isn't it, about why, because it kind of put, like what Helen B just said, it kind of puts me in mind of the whole Liam Neeson, what I call Neeson logic, right? Liam Neeson thing when he got in a little bit of trouble, not real trouble, but he got reprimanded slightly, got a little slap on the wrist for the comments that he made, if anyone can remember, when apparently a loved one of his was sexually assaulted. And the first thing he asked her was he black? So, the color of the person committing the sexual assault on this person that this loved one of his was more important to him than the fact that she'd been sexually violated. So that's quite interesting. So people should keep that in mind. Like, why aren't they more afraid of each other? And why is the color of the person who's committing the crime with them more important to them than the actual crime being committed? So, yeah, I agree 100% with what Helen B said. I advise people to think of that.
Yeah, I remember that incident. He was driving around looking for black people to harm because of what happened to his one of his associates. Very, very, very telling. And there's an interview with him discussing it. I'm pretty sure it could be of constructive value to decode that.
Yeah, that just inspired that phrase in me. I just call it Neeson's logic. That's what I call it, Neeson's logic. Where if any black person commits any crime, just go out and find any black person to get revenge on. That's Neeson's logic. Any black person you can just substitute any other black person for the crime of another black person. Doesn't matter who it is.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I stand in error. He wasn't looking to harm a person. He was looking to kill a black male. And I'm just gonna read a little bit from this article from BBC. He said he walked the streets with a weapon for a week years ago, hoping to take out his anger after someone close to him was raped by a black man. The Hollywood star said he was ashamed of his actions, but his remarks have sparked blah blah blah. Okay, yeah, I'm not racist, says Liam Neeson.
Yeah, and in that interview, I remember he said he was looking around for any black bastard That's the word he actually used. I was looking for any black bastard who was looking for trouble. Yeah. That's. I remember he said exactly that. Neeson's logic.
Yeah, and that Cold War right there, you know, bastard, you know, that that is correct. You know, our true fathers in the system are unfortunately racist men. Our true mothers are racist women, and we're bastards because they have abandoned us to suffer in this system. Quite tragic, quite terroristic. But yeah, I love your the term you've coined. Very excellent, and I see that a lot. He's not the first to exhibit this specific form of behavior.
Yeah, Neeson's logic. It's funny actually. What's her name? What's the Lovely Bones author? It's exactly the same thing. Yeah. Alice Seabold. So it's the same kind of thing. If we call it like Neeson's logic, it's the same thing any black person will do. She claimed she was assaulted by this black, and she just said, was it a couple of months afterwards? Then she just said, "Oh yeah, this is the person that did it. Wasn't even the person. Any black person will do." And it turns out now, lots of other law enforcement knew that wasn't the person responsible, but any black person will do. Neeson's logic.
I think I've seen a clip of a baby. It's an actual white child baby. Can't be more than I don't know 3, but she seems to have eaten some cookies, and then like her mom is asking her about it, and then the child lies and says, "No, I didn't eat it."
I remember that.
And she blames it. And she blames it on a black man.
Blames it on the black person. Yep.
Yeah, so damn,
some logic.
Really early. Tragic. So tacky. Wow. It seems that they learn it very, very early. What does it mean to be a white child, a white man, a white woman? So this character here, Larry Lavin, he could have been a person, definitely could have been an inspiration for what's that guy's name? Walter White from Breaking Bad. But yeah, he's one of the interesting characters, suspected racist that we learn about in this text. I'm just gonna read a little bit from 161. And the book Dr. Diller by Mark Bowden, the cover of the paperback version describes a major character. To the world, Larry Lavin was a successful young dentist, a skillful businessman, and a dedicated family man. In reality, he was the biggest mastermind. He was the mastermind of a 60 million a year cocaine empire, the biggest drug operation in Philadelphia's history. There are several words that play subtly on one's mental perception of Mr. Lavin. The term mastermind implies smart, intellectual, and genius. This is a strange choice of words. All chemical peddlers have some degree of intelligence, yet when Blacks are dealing illegal chemicals, the terms are some of the harshest known to humanity. There are the other words used to describe Mr. Lavin are equally interesting: dedicated family man and skilled businessman. While the author was attempting to make a comparison between Lavin's 2 different lifestyles, his use of certain words has a powerful influence on the perception of Mr. Lavin's character. He is subtly portrayed as a decent man who happens to get caught in the cruel drug business. The hype on the back cover design shows that Mr. Lavin's participation in illegal chemical peddling was somehow glamorous and ultra posh. In reality, there was nothing glamorous about what he was doing. Simply put, Mr. Lavin was a criminal peddler of illegal chemicals. This is part of the spin put out to play down the criminal activity of white people. So, and when this is an article where this picture is being displayed. It's called Flaunt. And there's more code words in this article. They said he was he lived in affluent neighborhoods, so-called successful, got degrees from white institutions. And it's just really interesting because I was like, okay, who is a black male drug dealer? And then Nikki Barnes came to mind. And I watched like all the news broadcasts involving Nikki Barnes, and not once was he called a dedicated family man, nor was he called a skilled businessman, nor was he called a mastermind, even though he also had a so-called drug empire, But we did see in a news broadcast involving Nikki Barnes, we did see his victims, a ton of black people. We get to see like how he's terrorizing the so-called neighborhood. But Mr. Lavin, we don't see his victims, his people ODing on the illegal substances that he's peddling. But it just goes to show, and for this article to be called Flaunt, I mean, like a website to be called Flaunt, and for them to be showcasing this white man and also describing him very similar to how Mark Bowden did. It's all very telling how, like, the white people love showing off and glorifying their various suspected racists and their antics. But yeah, Nikki Barnes portrayed as a just silly black male who happens to have his own drug empire. Larry Lavin, successful, skillful businessman. Really, really telling. Even when you're doing the same crime, you still have totally different connotations directed at you with these words, these masters of words. They have really done a number, and designing the system to train our minds to think in really, really peculiar and probably incorrect ways whenever we think white and then whenever we think black. Anyone want to share more notes before I continue?
Yes, I would. Very well said. This is very engaging. So I wanted to share on one, kind of going over to 162, shortly after the Lavin suspected, probably confirmed racist suspect or racist. So he kind of he's still going on about, still talking about word bombs, starts to talk about how Black people have kind of used word bombs and are almost completely aware of it. I would say are completely aware of it. He says the derogatory racial language barrage is so piercing that even the people who live in these communities use the language to describe where they live. They do not understand the kind of economic, political, and image damage that is inflicted on their community when they use derogatory language to define their surroundings. So I think that this is very apparent. I may be confused or maybe unaware, but I suspect that this is still being used today. But I mean, from a number of sports interviews, especially when you're interviewing young children, young Black children, even in movies, there's always this kind of sense that, if I wasn't playing sports, then I'd probably be on the streets peddling drugs, or my community's so full of violence, I can't do anything, stuff along that lines. So I liked how shortly after that he says that Black people tend to say these things in trying to get help from white people, right? Because as a victim of racism, all you can do is ask for help because you have no power under the system. So a lot of times Black people will use these word bombs and these phrases to ask white people for help. But in reality, racist man, racist woman is not coming to help them. Racist man, racist woman loves the fact that they are calling themselves using these racially charged word bombs to describe them, themselves and their surroundings. And they love the fact that they don't have to do any of it, right? They don't have to do any of the work, because the victims of racism who are confused about racism will do the work for them. So he says that they think that, oh, well, so then he also talks about the naive Black children. So they go before the cameras talking about they would be involved in crimes. I've probably even said that myself, you know, as a victim of racism, being confused, admitting that, oh, if I wasn't playing sports, I'd probably be doing drugs. If I wasn't playing sports, I might be in the crime. And I don't even know if I believe that. You know, I think I was just saying it because that's what I was being told, and that's what I was being made to believe. And then kind of going later on into that, I liked how he kind of talked about the role of media, because a lot of times media, right, the greatest tool the white supremacist probably has in their arsenal of practicing racism, is the number one, I guess, gateway or producer of these kind of messages. They'll go on and through media, they're the ones spreading these messages. So drug infested, crime infested, they're the ones using these words. Day-to-day Black people don't use these words. I don't even think I could be in error, but I don't even think that the average white person uses these words in conversation. But you find a lot of these words in media. So he says that the role of media is to get this story correct. And that's what we would like to believe in a system of justice. We would imagine that the media would stop spreading lies and spread the truth. But under a system of racism, white supremacy, the media is actively doing what it's been created to do, which is spread lies, spread deceit, and confuse masses of non-white people. So I guess under a system of racism, white supremacy, the media is only there to spread lies, deceit, and confusion. I don't know if the media has ever told the truth about anything. Probably only about the numerous murders happening in black so-called communities, even though we know those don't exist. So he talks about those, and then the word bombs, but then he also has the word war raids. So not only are there word bombs, but there are war raids. I should try to find an acronym for that. Kind of a mouthful, but yeah. So not only are there word bombs, but there are WWRs. So how are these different from word bombs? Well, it's a sequence in which a number of word bombs are just dropped at once. So maybe a racist rant, maybe from somebody can be seen as a WWR, word raid bomb, war raid. So yeah, those are often used targeting Black people in their living environments. Like he says on 163, he says, word bombs are dropped during word war raids. WWRs are large-scale derogatory language bombardments against targeted Black populations and their living environments. I'm going to skip a little bit. It said word raids act in a slightly different manner. They are large-scale bombardment. I kind of explain that. I'm not going to read that again. But I think that what the important part of this is towards the end, where he says these atrocious word raids happen without any counteroffensive from the targeted racial population. The lack of response gives validity and the sound of truth to the racial accusations. What is said, written, or musically is taken for granted as truth. So there's two things there that I wanted to discuss. So the fact that when these word raids are happening, that there is no counteroffensive, there's nothing being done about it. You know, oftentimes non-white people have to rely on white people to come out and say things against what was said in that word raid. One example I think of is not too long ago, I think it was maybe the Texas governor or senator, one of those politicians, was saying that Black people weren't getting vaccinated, right? Trying to create the image that Black people are the cause for the coronavirus pandemic. And I could be in error, right? But I think no, I don't know. I don't think any Black people came out and spoke against it. People were relying on like the president and other politicians to come out and say things like, "Oh, that didn't happen." Maybe even Joe Biden made a statement, but that was said by a racist suspect, and there was no collective kind of counteroffensive towards that. You know, it was just kind of accepted. People got angry, but nothing was said, nothing was done in a manner that we could call a collective counteroffensive, in my opinion. So oftentimes, when that happens, people go on to believe it, even though I know that a number of white people in all kinds of agencies, law enforcement, firefighting, whatever you want to call it, they don't want to get vaccinated. They are not getting vaccinated. They're saying they're not. I think that Black people have been the most accepting when it comes to getting vaccinated. And then the second part was where he says, what is said, written, or musically is taken for granted as truth. I think that is also a very important point, especially when we're talking about non-white people and Black people especially. We tend to, when he says musically, I think of musicians and artists, and we kind of take their word. We take a lot of entertainers, we take them for their word, and we kind of treat them as so-called leaders, and we expect what they're saying to be truthful and honest and well thought out and intellectual, but that oftentimes is not the case. So yeah, that's my notes for that. I'm gonna mute my line.
Media, aka white people. White people are the ones who run and manage and control the media. Page 161. In 1970, white college youth were the most publicly recognized users of illegal drugs. There is a term called tune out and tune on and tune out. That term was popularized by a guy by the name of Timothy Leary. He turned out to be a FBI agent or informant. Let me correct that. Informant. When I think of how white people are portrayed as when they're portrayed as drug dealers, drug users, yeah, they come off all smart and so intellectual. It's a business thing. And when it comes to us, when non-white people, yeah, it's played down. And Breaking Bad did an excellent example. That's an excellent example of how white people are portrayed. They first made us try to be sympathetic to him because he had cancer, X, Y, and Z. Also, it's also played out in movies. There's a movie called Deep Cover, and it was Jeff Goldblum and Lawrence Fishburne. Lawrence Fishburne was looked at as more as the muscle, not the brains of it. Jeff Goldblum, which is a white man, he was portrayed as the minds, the brainiac of coming up with this new drug. Also, even though this is not about dealing drugs, but the movie Wolf of Wall Street, that's another one where white men are portrayed as, so intelligent and look what this scheme he came up with. Let me see. Blow, that's another movie with Johnny Depp. King of New York, Christopher Walken. He's white man portrayed as, the mastermind. Let me see what else I have. And so in the area that I reside in, okay, let me go back a little bit. So when I think of a so-called drug dealer, but you have to think to yourself, what has caused him to become a drug dealer? What happened? Why isn't he working? Why wasn't he able to find a regular job or a 9-to-5 or whatever? You got to think racism, white supremacy. He applies for a job, he gets denied so many times. He has he needs food for his family and attempted children and everybody else. So he's left to no other resources. So a non-white Black male in this area, he became a businessman. First, he did illegal, work, and then he used his money and he got he bought a legitimate business. It was like where you make copies and print, make banners and invitations and stuff like that. And then, so he's doing really, really well, went legit, right? And then a few years later, what opens up? Staples. And of course, they have the money, so they have the backing, they had computers and this, that, and the other. His business didn't have all these things, so eventually it went out of business. And when I think of a non-white so-called drug dealer, whatever, I always thought of them as businessmen. I thought like, wow, like the potential. You have to be a supervisor. You have to know how to manage money. You have to know how to count. You have to somewhat be an accountant in a sense. So I always thought of them as extremely smart and extremely intelligent, but were not able to get the better job. But I didn't think racism. I just like, oh, they couldn't get the accountant job or whatever. But I didn't think of why. But now I know why.
Wow.
Yeah, usually in this sort of area of the world as well, when they report on kind of things to do with drug dealing, etc., they usually do show black people. But most of the time, usually at the top, the person at the top of these kind of drug pyramids is a person who's classified as white. So usually when these so-called police go on these drug raids, or they say they're going to get tough on drugs, etc., they usually show black people. But the person at the top who gets the drugs into the country, so-called country, and the person who's making most of the money off of these illegal substances is usually someone who's classified as white. And we're always led to believe, or always led down some strange narrative of in the way that we talk about the white person or the black person, especially particularly with famous people as well. In the media, a couple of years ago, there's a celebrity chef over here called Nigella Lawson, and she was found to have been using cocaine, right? And she was portrayed, the way they talked about her, she was portrayed as some sort of nice white woman who just happened to use cocaine. And she got a little slap on the wrist, etc. And then in terms of, we're just going to pretend that we're going to kind of lambast her in the media, so-called, but we're not going to really punish her. She just happens to use drugs, because when white people use drugs, they're just people using drugs. If it's a black person, then obviously the narrative is very, 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 very different. And just on page 162, I thought it was very, very constructive what Kahari and Hara wrote here on page 162, which deserves, I think, a lot of non-white people should definitely pay attention to when white people say stuff like crime-infested community. He's got an excellent breakdown, very, very constructive breakdown, I think he does here on 162, when he says, what is a crime-infested community? If 50 people in a community of 5,000 are using illegal drugs, does that mean the entire community is drug-infested? What is the numerical or percentage threshold for drug infestation in an area? Is the infestation level 10, 20, 30, or 40% of the population of a defined geographical area? The role of the media, white supremacist media, is to get the story correct. Right, what they do is to besmirch an entire community for the behavior of a few unsavory characters, is getting the story incorrect and purposely spreading a lie. So I think it's definitely worth a lot of non-white people purchasing this book. Just pay attention to that paragraph there. I think it's an excellent breakdown there by Kari and Hara.
Yeah, agree. And the questions, like that's definitely a counter-effective, a countermeasure one can use when trying to counter racism and white supremacy questions. Kwaku brought up how we have no defense for these word bombs or word war raids, and I think questions, some logical questions and some thinking could be a countermeasure we could take in dealing with what the white supremacist, racist man and racist woman have been dishing out. Because wow, words. It's very tragic.
When you stay in the question lane and you ask them what they actually mean by what they just said, all of a sudden then they then have to define exactly what it is they mean. And then usually, not all the time, but most of the time, I'd say probably 95% of the time, then you just see them sort of start to kind of stutter, right? And just explaining what it is they actually mean by what they said. And you more often than not, the racism is revealed.
Yeah, precisely. And maybe even I'm going back to what Quakey read about like Black people repeating the word bombs and the race code words that have been taught to us, like athletes saying that, if I wasn't playing ball, I would probably be robbing or on the street somewhere. And yeah, that's like in 2021 we have new sayings, like we have new coded slangs. Like I suspect, like I would often ask people when I was in a different concentration camp, I would ask my fellow people classified as Black, so what are you up to, what's going on? And they would say something like, you're staying in my lane, you're staying in my lane. And I was like, I haven't heard that before, but I heard it from a number of people in that particular concentration camp. And in hindsight, as I was reading that, like this code slang popped into my head. I was like, I wish I could ask him, like, who put you in this lane, and where's this lane headed? I think it would be the white supremacists, and to probably not towards, the lane is not headed towards countering it. But yeah, it reminded me of that. And yeah, and I do think it is constructive to read how Kyrie and the Herald describes word war raids. So yeah, I'm just gonna give it a read from 163. So the folks who find this broadcast later, who are listening now, can have a better understanding of what word bombs are, and war raids could also be seen as just white people spewing out buckets and buckets of words to confuse us. But here on 163, Kyrie and the Herald states, word bombs are dropped during word war raids. Word war raids are large-scale derogatory language bombardments against targeted Black populations and their living environments. Word raids are designed like military warfare to be used like aerial bombing raids, where hundreds of explosive devices are dropped to inflict maximum physical destruction. Word raids act in a slightly different manner. They are large-scale bombardments of word bombs dropped strategically on a concentrated racial population or social environment. The goal is to establish an immediately unfavorable image of a racial population or area. When white populations want to relocate to an area that is populated by Black people, different language is used to describe the area changes. They will rename and redefine the area and create a different impression of it. Dropping word bombs will stop, and new, more positive words will appear. And so, it's no coincidence that areas of the world where Black people dwell that are often called hoods, it's no surprise that they were allowed to be called hoods and ghettos. And now those areas are being reclaimed by white people, and they're like dropping the Starbucks in there, and all the white people are, sprucing up the neighborhood, the environment. All the Black people are having to leave. So I think this is an excellent just example of how white people just use, even in conversation, even with simply, because one thinks you have to wage war, with like direct energy, direct physical, taking a gun and shooting, someone on a battlefield. But the war is also waged through words, through like these policies that white people arrange, through the people that you see speaking on their TV screens, that are convincing you to think and think such things and think in a very particular ways. This is all very dangerous, because it leads to so-called gentrification, which is just racial dislocation. White people keeping Black people on the move and practicing racism at the same time by mistreating Black people and taking their dwelling area, which was never theirs to begin with, because white people own everything on planet Earth. Until this problem is solved. But yeah, it just shows that white people, even when you're having a conversation with them, they are in some way, shape, or a form, like, waging some sort of war. They're engaging in conflict with you, or could be. I'm not saying 100% of the time, but it's very possible. This is why we should be suspicious of our white people. But it's very suspicious. It's very possible that they are just speaking in a way that is not just, revealing things that should be revealed, saying the truth, that which is. I don't think that is happening for the most part. So maybe practicing some form of deceit against you is what I should have said. But all in all, war raids, it makes sense. Just how you in war, they will bomb a certain area a couple of times and then send in the troops to investigate the carnage and to clean up the enemies that are left over. That's how these war raids work. They'll just target a group of Black people with various like incorrect things. I said this area has too much crime, has too many muggings. We need to, like, get tougher on crime over there. And next thing you know, the Starbucks there, all the Black people have been moved out. And then the jogging people, the people jogging, coming through the neighborhood, those might as well be the troops coming in after the bombs have been dropped. They're just coming in to see who's left over. How are we going to get rid of these ones? Well, I may be in error. I may be just a fellow insane victim talking in insane asylum of white supremacy, or I may be onto something.
The line 163, these atrocious war raids happened without any counter-offensive from the targeted racial population. Think Twitter, people, think Facebook. And another thing, in Harlem, white people are trying to change the term Harlem, and they have sections called NoHa and SoHa. NoHa means north of Harlem, and SoHa means south of Harlem. They also, white people tried to create something called bodegas. Now bodegas over here, little corner stores where, what I want to say, corner stores owned by or run by so-called Hispanics. And white people try to come up with the idea of bodega by taking a little, like, how could I explain it? Like a little box that you sit on the side of the street that will have the things that will be inside of bodega. Think, how do I want to describe it? Like, it was just a horrible idea, just crazy. Like, think like when you work someplace and like a factory or something, they have something that that dispense like soda or sandwiches in little compartments. They were trying to create something like that and call it bodega and put it on the corner out on the street. Yeah. So yeah, white people.
Wow, Helen, that is very interesting. I'm gonna read this part here on 164 and then and tell you why. One derogatory word shrewdly combined with another depreciatory word can wipe out any positive images of populations and their living environments. These words used over and over again with unfavorable visual images form a racial point of view that becomes established and embellished. And my only note for this passage was Harlem. And Harlem used to be known as a hub for Black people helping each other, Black people, participating in commerce, and constructive things like that. Now, they're trying to disappear Harlem, naming it NoHa, like, no, that's not Harlem, or Soha, or so what, Harlem, so what. It's just very interesting ways that they erase things and producing TV shows called Harlem that present just Black people being silly and in conflict with each other. It's not what what so-called Harlem should be associated with. It should be associated with victims of racism and the need to produce a system of justice. But and this system that is unlikely to happen anytime soon. But really interesting. And this happens with various areas of the world that Black people dwell. Happen with so-called Crenshaw, so-called Inglewood, so-called South Central. That they're all being word war rated up, bombed out, and the joggers are moving in. The white joggers with the strollers and the white people are moving in. So we got to get serious about solving this problem. Are we gonna continue to be displaced, population tailored and mistreated in all areas of people activity, or we can solve the problem? Very simple. What needs to be done here? Folks want to share? Go ahead.
Yeah, on 164, 165, when Kari and Hara adds a list of examples of some frequently used word bombs. Like already discussed on in today's broadcast, I can't remember who brought it up, but just one of the best defenses against that is against the word bombs or word phrases is to ask questions. So one of the phrases in the list, darkest or deepest Africa. If someone says darkest or deepest Africa, just try asking some questions like, what is the light part of Africa? What is the shallow part of Africa? Get them to explain exactly what they mean by that. When they say things like gangbang area, another I guess word phrase, like a race code word bomb phrase, is if they say gangbang area, just ask like an example, how many gangbangs were committed in that area? Are there gangbangs committed anywhere else? Are they always reported? Are they always prosecuted? Just get them to explain exactly what they mean when they say stuff like uncivilized behavior is another phrase. Does civilization have a color? What does civilized mean? What is civilized? Is a white supremacist system civilized? Is apathy towards a white supremacist system civilized behavior? Is ignoring it civilized? Is not putting an end to that system also civilized? Is that uncivilized behavior? Just ask it. I think that's the best defense, or one of the best defenses towards race codes, phrases and stuff, and word bombs or bomb phrases.
Very, very excellent list of questions right there. Again, thank you, Smoky Damages. 166, just again, a significance display of why we need to be very, very just paying attention to what white people are saying, and so we could kind of have a better understanding of what they could be up to, because just this text has just allowed me to, if the code, taught me that I should be suspicious of white people, race code war is teaching me why I should be suspicious, because it's just, I'm just gonna read it. So 166, should I read both of these? Let me see. All right. When the word bombs are accepted in a national lexicon, it is a signal that social change is about to happen. When the language is quickly hardened, the hardening of the social political structure is close behind. The levels of coded race words determine in which direction the white supremacists plan to move. If the language is soft race code, it means that a more skillful game of deception is being employed or is required. So, and then we get terms like neighborhood revitalization, new urbanism, very, very crafty. White supremacists are super, super, super deceitful. And yeah, this is information that I should have known many, many years ago. All right, I'm just gonna continue with my notes. So this is the last bit of notes I'm gonna share, and then just gonna play a sound clip, and we can get into basically part 2 of this discussion, which is covering the word bombs disguised as sports talk, which is a very, very telling portion of this text as well. So just to give folks a better understanding of what a soft code word is, I'm just going to read a bit here. Soft racial code language is used when a very sensitive operation is underway that requires the greatest level of deceptive skills. These kind soft word campaigns are run in so-called third world countries to get the people to cooperate with birth controls or opening up economic markets. Soft code words were used to fool Black people during the year of the anti-poverty programs. Terms such as model cities, affirmative action, urban renewal, equal employment opportunity, minority enterprise, and citizen participation created an impression of positive change. However, the real change of self-reliance was never realized. The anti-poverty program ran strong and was designed to neutralize the Black Revolution, Black resistance, Black rebellion, Black self-development, and Black economic independence. So yeah, these code words in general, all of them have the ability to just sabotage any effort that Black people attempt to make against the system. I think that's what happens when you don't understand that the system is largely operated with words. So yeah, super, super tragic. I can't think of any so-called Black movement that has been successful in eliminating racism, because we just haven't been able to understand that I don't know, just these words that were so wellly just created. Yeah, I just don't know. I don't know how we haven't been able to understand how this is.
Yeah, that phrase affirmative action is such an interesting. I've been hearing that for so many years, that phrase affirmative action. And white supremacy, as we know, or some of us know, is the biggest system of quote unquote affirmative action. I mean, they affirm their action of maintaining the system of racism, white supremacy, right? They affirm what they're doing to us. They affirm that system every single day, every second of every single day. So, biggest recipients of affirmative action are racist man, woman, and child.
Precisely. Okay, I'm gonna play a quick soundbite.
There are 4 types, or 4 forms of it. There are 4 types, or 4 forms.
Can it be heard?
That you can get to by going to
Yes.
Nope, can't hear it anymore.
Yeah, I can't hear it anymore either.
One moment, let me fix that.
There are four types, four forms of it that you can get to by going to producejustice.com. You'll see it in the textbook, the forms that it takes. And that is black people's biggest drawback when it comes from not only not having a code, but not really being focused on countering and eliminating racism as the reason for being. Whereas the white supremacists, their whole reason for being, for existing, is white supremacy. They have no other reason for even existing. This is why they're in such opposition to anybody changing it. Because if you take white supremacy away from a white person who believes in white supremacy, you've taken everything. You haven't just taken something. And it's the same way with black people. You take away the ability for a black person to show off to another black person, that black person is now suicidal.
So I thought that sound clip was an awesome segue into this next part, tragically. And also, folks, please go to producejustice.com, order a copy of the code so we can get on code. And if people say we need a code, I hope they're referring to the attempted counter racist code that has been arranged by Neely Fuller Jr. I do hope they're promoting folks to take some suggestions from that concept. But yeah, tragically, that was a great segue into what we're going to be talking about, what I'm going to be talking about this portion of word bombs disguised as sports talk. And I just think white supremacy is so powerful. Let me see. Do you guys see Mr. Dennis Rodman on the screen right now? Is that being shown?
That was just an article. It was there a second ago.
Okay, let me get it back on the screen. Okay, yeah. So, thank you. White supremacy is so powerful that it can get black males who are not even actors, who are not even rappers or musical entertainers, but it can still get them an address. And this is my my first time seeing this image. Maybe some of you all first time seeing this image, highly celebrated. You know, this article is from last year. You know, this happened in the 1990s, but we have this, you know, white supremacy will create these images, will convince black males to put on a dress and to celebrate the image forever. Because, you know, this is articles from last year. And I have this up because I want to read. I think Dennis Rodman was attempting to show off. I think what Kyrie and Harrow stated about Dennis Rodman seeking just to be a more known basketball player, and to him getting a stylist essentially to that helped him with his image and convinced him to start dyeing his hair blonde and all that stuff. I think that was him seeking attention. I may be in error, but
is there an explanation as to why he's wearing that dress in that photo?
Yeah, if I understand correctly, there was some sort of publicity going around where he is marrying him, like married himself, where he wanted to wanted to
Oh God, just confusion on top of confusion on top of
yeah,
confusion.
and
Wow.
it was a whole like event, you know. He was brought out in like a carriage type thing, and yeah.
I'm not even gonna
And
ask how he. I'm not even gonna ask how he consummates the marriage.
and this was also done around the time that a white singer by the name of Madonna was chasing after him, so-called dating him.
Oh wow.
Oh man, we haven't even got time enough in the program for me to talk about Madonna.
Yeah, it's just super. Oh yeah, I'm just gonna read here from 169. Wait, is this the part I want to read? Oh yeah, bam, yep. Tragically, so think about the Neely Fuller clip, and Kyrie and her was also like basically reiterating about the showing off. He says in reality, wait here, up. They unwittingly play into the hands of racists who develop images that are akin to the old Southern race imaging practices of Watermelon Joe, Chicago Bulls star Dennis Rodman put on a wedding dress to stage an artificial marriage. He posed as a female bride dressed in white, which in the white supremacist marriage context is the racial symbol of purity and virginity. In reality, it appears that Rodman has plenty of women, including white women, to go around. He played this role to get more money and attention and did not understand or care about the long-term image consequences of this kind of behavior. Millions of Black and white people see these powerful images and believe that Black men are sexual predators, perverts, and freaks. They took the opportunity to poke fun and make jokes about the stupidity of Black males. So yeah, this is an iconic picture. You know, it shouldn't be. This is a very iconic picture. Tragically, you know, they're still laughing about this. 11 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, my bad. So, and that's just the power and the utility of these. And it's not a coincidence that RuPaul is mentioned in this article. You know, RuPaul is mentioned in this article, and RuPaul is also mentioned in this text, and he calls it make it canceled right now, but that's I don't care. He calls it on 169, cross-dressing is part of the RuPaul transvestite syndrome. The objective of white supremacists is to get the most talented and physically gifted. Let me put another one on the screen. Tragic. It's just another tragic one y'all got to see. Ricky Williams, you know, he's trying to show his dedication to being married to the game of football. But again, page 169, cross-dressing is part of the RuPaul transvestite syndrome. The objective of the white supremacists is to get the most talented and physically gifted, masculine-looking Black males into women's clothing. The objective is to emasculate the image of Black men. The record rising of Black male transvestitism is a testament to the effectiveness of these images. So, how its systems this powerful? This is not an actor, or actress, or musical entertainer. This is a so-called athlete, and you know they still get them some way, shape, or form to put on these dresses, and it's just so bizarre to me. But now now I'm less confused about why it's taking place, and it's very
It's definitely interesting when you look at anytime I see types of behaviors like that or images like that in the so-called media, I think to myself, do the white people who are observing that type of behavior by Black people? Do they see that behavior as constructive? I mean, they already know that we're victims of a whole system of racism and white supremacy. I know they know that. But do they see this behavior as constructive when they look at pictures of Dennis Rodman like that, or the behavior of people like that, or just Black people in general being non-constructive? I mean, or just behavior that we do they see as behavior? Do Black people ourselves see that type of behavior as constructive? And also, I think other non-white people should keep that in mind. Do other non-white, non-Black people see that type of behavior as constructive? I think a lot of people classified as Black should keep that in mind. What do other people think, and what do we think of it? Is that constructive? How does that help us? Does that help ending the system of racism, white supremacy, when you see Dennis Rodman in a dress or whoever else? I don't know, but yeah, it's worth asking the question. Just making things that you do constructive, whether it's when you're going to leave your house today and walk across the road, make sure you're doing something constructive. If you're about to eat a plate of food, make sure that it has a constructive result when you put it in your body. And when I apply that type of logic to Dennis Rodman or whatever, I just have to ask the question: is it constructive? And I don't think it is.
Lots of logic there versus monkey damages. Yeah, that's an excellent question to ask about, most of anything that a person tries to get a person classified as Black to participate in, most of it, I suspect, won't be constructive. And this whole section, word bombs disguised as sports talk brought me back to this clip. Shout out to Ray 1/0 for this clip, because this is a timeless piece of racist propaganda from a very, very loved suspected racist Joe Rogan, who I've always had a huge suspicion of, due to him just being a gross individual. Anywho, I'm gonna play it, but this is just what we're covering. Just seeing Blacks as like creatures, monsters, animals. Something that I wish I could take this thing apart and just utilize it for to be the best sports machine or athlete on earth. It's what we're diving into.
What are you?
Dad's Black, mom's white. Standard issue, pretty much.
Powerful combination genetic wise, right? You get the body of the Black man, and then you get the mind of the white man all together in some strange combination. That doesn't, by the way, mean that Black people don't have brains. It's a different brain. Don't get me wrong.
It's fascinating, stellar. Yeah, so this is kind of stuff that I suspect a lot of white people be talking about when they when they're talking about sports, especially when they talk about sports and there's no Black people in the room. It kind of probably looks a lot like this. I may be.
That would have been a perfect example for someone to ask him exactly what he means. Like, what type of brain does a white person have? What type of brain does a Black person have? And when he said it's a different type of brain, what are the differences? Just get him to explain exactly what he means. Just stay in the question lane. Can't emphasize that enough for a lot of non-white people who are listening to this broadcast. Stay in the question lane. Get him to explain exactly what he means by the differences in white brains and Black brains. It would be so interesting to hear his answer. I suspect he'd be real honest as well if put on the spot. You never know.
Excellent. Yeah. This is the importance of counter-racist science. We have to make it our bread and butter. We have to make it our norm, our normal behavior to question things, question all things. We have been trained to just hear stuff like this, and give a chuckle, laugh.
Oh yeah, we have to be forensic with it. I
Yeah.
remember years ago. When I was a documentary about Adolf Hitler talking about Jesse Owens when he went to the Olympics and he saw Jesse Owens and he was saying, "Well, it's not really fair." I think I can't remember the exact quote. Adolf Hitler was meant to have said, "It's not really fair to use that word to pit a white person against a black person like Jesse Owens, because these black people, they're animals, they're like racehorses, right? We're not really human, right? I think it's well documented as to what Adolf Hitler and people like him think of black people, and not just Adolf Hitler. Obviously, people like Joe Rogan. Right. Again, like what we were talking about before, we're fooled into thinking that it's this person over here that thinks like that. No, Joe Rogan obviously thinks in exactly the same way that Adolf Hitler did. Some people might think that's a bit of a stretch, but analyze the comments and then we come to see that, they're just cut from the same cloth. They might say in different areas of the world, but they have exactly the same type of sentiments when they look at black people.
Yeah, they definitely seem to be thinking about genetics. Because also one of the first things that came out of his mouth was like, the genetic equation. So very, very.
Yeah, it sounds like that, like the Get Out movement. Exactly what they were saying when he used to the movie Get Out, when he was asking why black people, and they said something about the genetics, etc. I can't remember the exact part in that film where they were talking about it. It's a non-constructive film in many ways, Get Out, but constructive in some ways.
Yeah, agreed. So yeah, we learned about a lot of just interesting happenings in system white supremacy, and this chapter, closing out on chapter 3, and we learn about Mr. Latrell Spreewell, who was a Golden State Warriors basketball player, quite celebrated and quite comfortable in the system in regards of money, and had a sneaker contract with Converse, but due to his mistreatment in the system, he responded incorrectly and let his emotions get the best of him, and he choked one of his coaches, and he was basically mistreated because of that incident for the rest of his basketball career. And this is mentioned because during that incident, the broadcasters were painting it as just such a fatal, and like, how could this nigger put his hands around a white master coach? That was basically the talk of the airwaves when this happened. And that just goes, he describes that it symbolized black males getting out of the stranglehold of white people, white masters, and overthrowing white supremacy. The image of Spreewell choking his coach, it may have produced that image of black people getting serious about racism, or finally being fed up enough about it to do something about it. So they take care of Mr. Latrell and suspend him, lose millions of dollars. And I'm paraphrasing it because I don't want to read all of this. I thought it was very interesting. I never heard of Latrell. I'm not really interested in what goes on in Area 3 entertainment in regards to sports. But I thought it's very, very telling. And we learned about Larry Merchant, a famous boxing commentator. I did some research on him too. Found his broadcast to be very racist and very telling. I think I will play one just so we can just see the example of like the word bombs that are used by tragically confused black males, as well as sophisticated, deceitful white people. So let me get that on the screen. Meanwhile, if folks want to chime in or share what notes they have or have. not shared yet.
On page 168, you might have read this already, but this is why white broadcasters have difficult time interviewing modern black athletes. Joe Rogan. They do not understand how their racially based mindset impacts on how they see black people. I respectfully disagree with that. They know good and well what they're saying and what they're thinking, their thoughts. They understand. It's us non-white people who don't understand. And on page 169, sadly, too many black athletes are so money hungry. Why? This is me. With so little understanding. Now, you can't say they're money hungry and say so little understanding of the power of an image that they will allow a white publicist to talk them into perpetuating all kinds of derogatory images. You can't put a little understanding and allow in the same sentence. That doesn't make sense. Either they understand or they don't, and they don't understand. So how could they allow a white publicist, white people? No, it's not allowed. They have no control. They have no control. That's why we're under a system of racism, white supremacy. And we can get control by learning and taking the time to think and read and decode and ask questions and become more observant of white people. That's how we could gain control.
You know, I completely agree. I mean, they definitely know what they're saying. They definitely do know what they're saying, and I disagree with that little paragraph there. Respectfully, what Kari and Hara said. I mean, Joe Rogan is not stupid. He's not stupid at all. He said exactly what he meant. I mean, you don't even have to listen to us on this broadcast. Joe Rogan said exactly what he meant about genetics and different brains, etc. He knew exactly what he said. This whole kind of insidious myth of white ignorance is so dangerous. It's so dangerous. White people are not ignorant about racism. This whole system has not just been in place for as many years as it has been due to white people not knowing what they're doing to establish it, to maintain it, to refine it, to expand it. This it's not ignorance. They know exactly what they're doing. Be this kind of ignorance thing pushed by Tim Wise and Jane Elliott about ignorance, etc. White people are not ignorant.
Thank you all. I appreciate the logic being shared. Very accurate. I think this is very telling. Lots to decode here for folks who have that ability. I'm just gonna let it play.
Let's go to Larry with Floyd Mayweather.
Thank you, Jim. Congratulations, Floyd. You hear the crowd, at least the good part of it is in an uproar because they felt that you took shots at him unfairly after you went together in the ring, made up for the headbutt, and then you poked him. What's your story?
First off, I want to thank God for this victory, because without God, all this wouldn't be possible. I want to thank my team. I got hit with a dirty shot, and it's protect yourself at all times. I hit him with a left hook right hand, and that ended the bout.
So you're saying that even though it appeared that he wasn't protecting himself and thought that that was part of the ceremony that you were going through of apology, that you unfairly took advantage of it. What do you say to those who say, what'd you do there? You were winning the fight and in charge.
I just want to tell everybody that bought pay-per-view, that came out to Las Vegas, thank you. Anyway, it was a hell of a fight.
Floyd, you know you're a promoter, but now we're talking to you as a prize fighter. Let's take a look at what happened at the end of the fight,
let's look
and
at
you
it.
describe it.
We touch gloves. We back to fight hook. Right hand. And that's all she wrote.
So for you, it was just an automatic response. Let's get on with the fight.
It's protect yourself at all time. He done something dirty. We're not here to cry and complain about what he did dirty or what I did dirty. I was victorious. If he want a rematch, he can get a rematch.
You were in charge of the fight. You were aggressive and trying and taking advantage of what you saw as a flaw.
You know what I'm gonna do? Because you don't ever give me a face shake. You know that? So I'm gonna go and let you talk to Victor Ortiz, all right? I'm through. They put somebody else up and give me an interview.
What are you talking about? What are you talking
heard him.
about?
You never give me a fair shake. HBO needs to fire you. You don't know shit about boxing. You ain't shit. You're not shit.
I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
You won't do shit. You won't do nothing.
Notice how many times he said fair, both.
Right.
I'm talking about the white guy. And he started off beautifully. I love the way he just deflected, kept it calm or whatever. I'm so upset. Not even upset. I'm just like, wow. And towards the end, but I understand towards the end, like his emotions got the best of him. But I love the way he started off though.
Yeah, I thought this was yeah, just the seeds.
That was some black self-respect there. That was excellent. The way he handled the situation was excellent. Oh yeah, at the beginning, the white person there, suspected white supremacist there, and the way he just deflected his just trying to bait him. He just said, yeah, but don't you think he did? Yeah, whatever. I was just thinking, yeah, the way he deflected him was excellent.
Yeah, I heard Larry Merchant. I don't know if it was this video, but I heard him call a black male boxer a prize fighter. But he has a history of calling black male boxers like as belonging to stables or being stable mates. And yeah, he used the word fair a lot, aggressive. He said that Mayweather is being aggressive. Isn't a fight supposed to be aggressive?
Exactly.
But it just really interesting how like the racist image can never be removed. Like the racist image of the black male being all things but a person deserving of help and delivering a system of justice. As all that is removed. Nope, he don't need help. He needs to be called a nigger. He needs to get put in our ring to get brain damage, and then be talking about give things to a white god,
Yeah, and you see how he started off. He started off all nice and calmly talking to him, and then it just descended into, I wish I was 50 years younger, etc. It just turned into terrorism. It started off as nice and just kind of calm. It started all tacky, and then it just went from 0 to 60. Man, he didn't get the right response that he wanted, and all of a sudden it just went to, if I was 50 years younger, I'd react in the same violent way that I'm accusing you of reacting to this other guy. I'll react in a violent way towards you. So yeah. Hypocrisy of white supremacy.
Yeah, this is another case of black males not really being able to control those emotions. He was doing very well in the beginning, but the white supremacist is very antagonistic and very snaky. So it got to him eventually. And I remember when this happened, very interesting moment. And I agree, it's supposed to be aggressive. And if it was a white person who did it, they'd be saying, "Oh, he was quick as lightning," or he was,
Oh yeah, he was tactical. Yeah, he was such a tactical move on his part.
Or something like she's strategist. But it's really. Like what 05 said, just another moment of black male, deserving anything but help and empathy or a moment of overstanding, Yeah, and this is actually really interesting because there's these fighters. Jake Paul, he keeps fighting these black male fighters and he keeps winning, and it's really interesting how I think it was yesterday actually. There was a fight where he KO'd a black male by the name of Tyrone Woodley. This is the second time, and the first time, the black male had to tattoo the white fighter's name on his finger. So this is really interesting. How I don't know. I don't know how it's possible for a white person to knock out a black person in a boxing match.
It's always telling with the way that white people talk about black boxers and stuff. We're always sort of superhuman beast people that can't. That it's really not. It's not. It's really incorrect for them to be pitted against us until they beat us. Until they beat us, then all of a sudden it's yeah, this is great. Look the way how we beat up this weird superhuman beast and stuff like that. So on one way they're saying that we're so superior and we shouldn't really be fighting with them, but in another way, it's just it's just the illogical mindset of being a white supremacist, and usually when you just analyze what they say, it just doesn't ever make any sense. So you stay in the question lane and question these people long enough, nothing of what they said actually makes logical sense.
That whole white people are ignorant thing, this man has been, I'm talking about Larry Merchant. He's been doing his job. He's been a sports commentator from 1978 to 2012. Are you trying to tell me that he doesn't understand what he's saying when he's talking to what's his name?
Mayweather?
Yeah, Mayweather. Are you really trying to tell me that he's been doing this over 30 years? 34 years to be exact.
I agree. Yeah. White people are not ignorant. He knows exactly what he's saying.
Very refined, skillful that one is. And the evidence is that, the black male ended, by yelling and cursing and started confused with the just poor understanding of the concepts he's spreading and words he's using tragically, expectantly. Motivation for us to really get serious about developing our thought, speech, so we can have better actions because so
05. Sorry, where's that Joe Rogan clip from? Because I've really got to clip that little part of. I've never seen that Joe Rogan clip before, where he's talking about the brains and different brains, etc., and genetics. I've never seen that. I'm definitely gonna have to highlight that clip.
I'll send you the link I have, but I haven't seen all of it. It would be very epic to find the rest of it because I'm sure
there are tons of black people that I know that are just enamored with this Joe Rogan person, and I keep trying to tell him about Joe Rogan. I have to be suspicious of him, like other stuff that he said, like lots of stuff, and you know, using the word nigger all the time and stuff like that, and in his routines, etc. And they're just not suspicious of him. Yeah, it's really, really telling.
Yeah, I have a video on the channel, Testimony of White Supremacy, where I have a Joe Rogan clip of him saying something, just something that he's basically disregarding like Britain Tyrant, the Christ Church white supremacist terrorists. He really just disregarded his actions. And I was like, wow, very, very, very interesting. I hate Joe Rogan. Well, if I exerted an energy to hate a person, it would be directed at Joe Rogan, but I don't hate anyone. But yeah, he's very annoying, suspected racist. That one is for sure. This has, I'm sure this has been somewhat refined in 2021, but it's still very telling, it still goes on. And these are just a couple of selected examples of sports talk word bombs. Like he's a beast, he's a wild animal. I think this has been refined and by saying he's going beast mode, activate the beast mode, right, even rappers have a beast mode as well, so always comparing creating slang or terminology that is implying some sort of primal animalistic behavior. Very common in sports talk. Stop watching sports, start studying counter racism. He is nothing but an athlete. He cannot think. This also has probably been coded into phrases such as "shut up and dribble." You're not paid to think. You're paid to dribble. You're not
Laura
paid to
Ingram
use your,
said that.
yeah,
Shut up and dribble.
You're not paid to use your mouth. You're paid to use your arms and legs and hands to dribble that ball. So yeah, he's a thoroughbred, high genetically bred animal for sports. I can't say I've heard this race cool word mentioned, but tragically, when I was getting less confused and I was seeing I was just scrolling through the Twitter trending news nonsense that I'm fed, and whenever I hopped over to the athletes, like what's going on in the sports, I always saw college basketball, and I would notice like wow, it's a bunch of light skinned people on the court. Yeah, I don't see any dark skinned people. So I think they're ramping up to destruction of Black civilization, the basketball sporting arena. I think they're gonna be producing a lot more light skinned people to participate in that area because they're tired of the dark skinned people dominating that zone. Because I was like, wow, this is, every team, a bunch of tall, some like non-white people for sure, but like not that dark skin. So I don't care for sports, but that is something I made note of. And that concludes my notes. If I'll give opportunity for folks to share their remaining notes if they have any. If not, we could get into closing comments.
Verify, can you please find the clip of Serena Williams and the horse cover?
Oh, yes, man. Let me get that on me.
While you looking for it, I'm gonna read.
Wait, 1 second. You sent me it, right?
Yes, it's in WhatsApp.
Okay, thank you.
On page 171, most of the racehorses are dark brown to black. To date, there have not been a great number of white horses with winning records in the super rich, high stake horse races. Most of the great athletes in football and basketball are dark brown to black. How many times have black men in sports been compared to bucks and horses in a stable? All the time. And now they're also, white people also talking about black females in the same manner. Well, particularly Serena Williams and this horse cover.
Black people, well, I mean, we've said it before, people classified as black, stop romping for the delight of white people. Stop romping for the delight of white people. They've just said it. How many other ways can they say it? They see us as animals. They pay us to act like animals. Whatever we do, they describe us as animals. So, I mean, it's up to you. If you want to keep romping for the delight of white people, just carry on. If you think it's constructive, I don't. But hey.
And the English way, no, not the English way, but to translate what Smoking Damages just said, please get out of entertainment, please, because sports is just entertainment for white people. So please get out of all forms of entertainment, and that includes sports, boxing, baseball, football, all of it. It's just damaging to our bodies, our health, our minds, especially our minds.
This is an image I found. It was this an interview right here, the Charles Ramsey interview.
No, sir.
So it was just this image.
Yeah, just that image and what I just read about most dark horses and black to brown. Yeah,
Yep.
and how they tried to compare her to a horse.
Yep. Yeah, definitely really telling imagery. And yeah,
Never in my time on this planet have I ever seen a white person being compared to, a white person in sports compared to an animal, or even runner up for the cover of a magazine.
Remember the cartoon drawing of her as well, when is I can't remember, I don't know if it was a person who classified as white. I think it was a cartoonist, and they depicted Serena as some sort of gorilla character. And there's a lot of people that were it went quite kind of viral. A lot of people were complaining about it, or so-called complaining about it. And also, interestingly, you remember when she had that little bit of controversy when I can't remember exactly what happened on the court, because I didn't actually watch that particular game. But then I think she got a little emotional on the tennis court, and people were talking about, oh, I think she got fined. It was something she did, and she got fined. If someone can remind me exactly what happened. And then later in the press interview that she gave concerning the incident, and it's a perfect example of how many of us are really confused about race and white supremacy. And she was talking about, oh, because I'm a woman, this happened to me, and because I'm a woman, and blah. And I thought, what? Monica Seles is as loud as you. Other people are as loud as you are. You're being fined because you're a black woman, because you're a black person. It's got nothing to do with your gender. The white women down throughout the time of tennis who've acted in exactly the same way, and they're not talked about in the same way that Serena Williams was. So we need to understand what racism, white supremacy is, and how it works. Otherwise, we just won't understand what's happening to us. We'll just think it's because because we're female, or because we're men, or because we're part of the LGBTQ community, or whatever the case may be. We will always think it's because of something else. We won't understand that it's happening to us because we are classified as black in a system of racism, white supremacy.
Precisely. I'm going to go ahead and get us started with closing comments. Thanks everyone for their participation and their sharing of constructive information. Really enjoyed the program, the broadcast. Share the information, comment on this information on this video, like it, to get it in the algorithms. Hopefully more Black people who are wanting to understand why they're met with problems and such misery 24/7, and what we can do about said misery and problems, which is to work to solve the race problem and codify ourselves. And I don't want to take up too much of anyone else's time, so I'll mute my line.
I just want to say that I struggle to deprogram myself, if that's a term, with using terms that I don't fully understand. And Race Code War helps me to be more mindful of the terms that I use, the words that I use, and just to be more mindful and more thoughtful. And I remember when I was a child, which I still am, but I remember when I was a child and my victim mom would say, don't use words you can't spell. She was almost close with that, almost. But what she should have said is, don't use terms or words that you don't understand. You don't understand what you're saying. And something I'm trying to eliminate, well, I've accomplished it, but I try to eliminate whatever the favorite term of or phrase that people are using, like trash and hood and fair. I try to eliminate those terms from my vocabulary, and it's a bit of a struggle. It's kind of hard because I'm just used to just running it off, right? And definitely metaphors, like that is really hard. That's been really hard for me to shake or to get rid of, but I'm trying every day, and I appreciate this book. Gray's Code Wars, and please buy it. I beg of you. It's definitely helped me a lot. It's helped me a lot. And that's all. That's for my closing comment.
Just carrying on there from what you just said there, Helen B. I completely agree. In terms of terms and phrases, words that we use, we definitely need to understand exactly what they mean. And just for earlier in the broadcast, when I used the term Neeson's logic, in case anyone was confused about what I meant, it's about the person Liam Neeson, when he just wanted to attack any black person or kill another black person for the perceived crime of another black person. And I've actually codified it as well. The phrase Neeson's logic, when I say Neeson's logic, what I mean is this: the illogical, irrational behavior of people classified as white of substituting any black person to answer for any crime, real or imagined, committed by a person classified as black. That's what I mean when I say Neeson's logic.
Okay, I'm just gonna assume we lost Sir. And thank you, Mr. Smoking Damages, Miss B, for your closing comments. Thank the audience for their participation. Thank the people who will be finding this broadcast in the future. I hope it was of constructive value. We'll see you all at the next one, and also on Christmas, so-called Christmas. Deafness is what I prefer to call it.
Deafness / horror days.
Exactly. Again, thank you for your time and energy.